Hello and welcome to another sketchbook tour. This time this is probably one of my first Urban Sketchers sketchbook when I went to the symposium in Barcelona in 2013. So let's get started. So basically this is one of the first sketch that I did. I was really new to urban sketching and I decided to sketch the panel. Then this was one of the first class where we sketched more the architecture of the buildings around. This was the second attempt. And then with the same tutor, we went out and sketched out the area, and he was showing us how to sketch the shades to be able to get images to stand out and what to choose when we sketch. I sketched the panel again, and I sketched some of the people waiting. And then I had a course with Mark Holmes, which is very known in the urban sketching environment, where he taught us how to sketch people in motion. It was really difficult at the beginning. As you can see, I went really fast, but the more I did it, the more things became more precise. Like, for example, the guy with the cell phone, you can really get the basics of the detail of the person in motion. So basically the course consisted of like really rapidly sketching people that were moving, and it was in a very busy plaza, so we didn't really have time to really go too much into details, but it's a good exercise to be able to get the essence of the motions of the people, and it adds a lot to an urban sketch to be able to add people moving in there. In another exercise, we had to sketch people in a stand. So I sketched one of the vendors there that was selling ice cream. And again, sketching people in motion. There was a lot of tourists in the area, so there was a lot of activities going on. Another workshop that I had while I was there was with Richard Alomar, which is an instructor from New York, and we basically had a marathon where we had to sketch a bunch of little thumbnails of different areas of the city of Barcelona. As you can see, the first one was 30 seconds, the second one here was 5 minutes. But it was a great way to be able to put everything in place, and then afterwards we had a little bit more time. I think it was half an hour to an hour to actually sketch one of the plazas that were there. We also had an exercise where we had to sketch without looking at the paper and just looking at the subject, and it was very interesting to be able to see that you don't really need to look at the paper to be able to sketch something that's close to reality and to proportion. And then we had another exercise where we actually basically had to tell a story with the sketch, so we had to write down on one side what we saw, and on the other side we actually had to sketch the scene, which makes it even more interesting. I wrote a lot, so the story continues on the other side. Then we had a break and we sketched in a plaza. So this one was a little bit longer. And at that time I wasn't using colors. I wasn't very comfortable with colors, so I would be using pencils or pens. This was a sketch of, again, a plaza where we had to do the little thumbnail here before, and then afterwards recreate the drawing larger, knowing where everything goes. And there was like a nice fountain and everybody was sitting around there. It was really nice. Every so often we would have to go back and listen to people talking at the panel, so I sketched the people there. And at another event we went to the market, and again we were sketching people, but this time the idea was to find people almost as the hero of the story of your sketch, and basically sketch something around that. So my first sketch was of this lady. It was a mom that was very well dressed in the market. So that was my first attempt. I wasn't really comfortable because the teacher wanted me to use markers that were not as precise as the pen that I was used to. So it really forced me to get outside of my comfort zone. Like here I sketched the hero was this boy that was on his cell phone with the background surrounding it. And the marker with the broader tip really forces you to draw faster, really. And on the third attempt, I was sketching this lady who was a vendor who was selling a bunch of different vegetables there, again, using a marker. I wasn't really happy with the fact that it wasn't detailed, but I was impressed with how quickly I was able to get the entire scene. A couple days later, I went back to this page and I basically wrote down all the different things that I learned from the symposium in Barcelona. And you can see some attempt of me trying different things and not liking using the pen, the markers. I'm still not a big fan of it, but I get where it comes from. With this instructor, she had a very loose way of sketching, and her tip was to basically start with the blocking colors before going into details and basically different ways of being able to tell a story. So you can see here my first attempt where I had like a big block of yellow, brown, and blue, and then I drew the detail around. I didn't really like the first one. And then I did it again with this couple that was sitting down, and she was really encouraging me to use material that I was not used to using, like actual pencil as opposed to a pen that was a bit more refined. So that was my first attempt at this old couple using blocks of colors again. And then I tried again with another couple sitting at a table. This way I was a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more happy with that one. And then the older couple was sitting there for a long time, so I tried them again using blocks of colors, and I started to understand how using blocks of colors really helps you get the scene really fast, and you don't really have to go into details. I'm not a huge fan of that style, but I totally understand how it helps you tell the story really fast, and you don't need to go into too much details to be able to get the scene that you're seeing. This was one of the lectures that we had during the symposium, so I basically wrote a bunch of notes about that, and that was a pamphlet from the instructor, Fred Lynch. This is a picture of just a shadow of my hands. At the end of the day, I just went back and kind of continue practicing. So after the symposium was over, we had, I believe, a day left, so I started to sketch back into my comfort zone using like a more precise pen, but then I started to use a little bit more color because I was basically introduced to colors while I was at the symposium. So that was the top of the roof of the hotel. This was seen of one of the streets in Barcelona, and then we had a week vacation from Barcelona to Ibiza. So I started to sketch people in motion because I was practicing that before, and also all different details that I saw, like the flight attendant, the passenger, the view from the windows. And off the plane, I would sketch people. I even tried to do sketches with the markers of just the gestures. Once in Ibiza, I was even more comfortable, so I really started to use the fine detail, which is what I like to do the most, using pen and then adding colors with markers afterwards. So here you can see the hotel that we were staying at. The backyard had like a little restaurant, so I basically drew the area there and started to use the gray markers to be able to depict shades, which makes a huge difference. Ibiza was a cool little restaurant that was not too far from our hotel that we went to quite a couple times. So I basically, when we were waiting for a pizza, I sketched the area and the people there. And this was a really interesting story. So we went to a restaurant outside, and there was this family that was eating together, and decided to sketch them. And they noticed that I sketched them, so they saw the picture afterwards, and they were very touched. It seemed that I had captured a very interesting moment, the mom, the dad, and the daughter. And they actually even took a picture to keep with them and frame it. Like, had I thought about it before, I probably would have given them the original, but at least I also have a souvenir of that moment that was really cool. We stayed there for quite a few hours. So after sketching that family, I sketched some of the crews that were passing by, because we were right next to the water, and some of the people eating at the restaurant as well. It was right outside. And here again, more details of different people at the restaurant. The cool thing with some restaurants in Ibiza, especially that they're outside, you can actually bring your dog there. So that was a couple that had their dog sitting underneath the table with them. And the scenery was nice, the weather was nice. I added the colors afterwards. I basically just drew the general shape, and then when we came back to the hotel, I added the color. This was another time at the backyard of the hotel that we were staying at. They had a pool, so it was a great opportunity to practice watercolor. And on the right hand side was a little bakery that wasn't too far from the hotel as well, that we used to go for snacks every so often while we were there. So I sketched like the breads and the bread display and all this type of thing. It was really nice. I don't know if they're still there because it's like 3 years ago, but at the time it was really nice. And they actually saw the drawing as well, and they were very happy to see this. And that's when I was starting to use more markers to be able to show shades. This is a picture of the balcony of the hotel that we were staying at. It's the second time that we went to Ibiza, and I realized how much they also go into the whole condo thing. There's a lot of condos being built there compared to the couple of years we were there before. And on the right hand side, I was just practicing, like looking at the colors that I had in my palette. And then from Ibiza, we went back to Barcelona for a day. So I practiced again people in motion, and an airport is perfect for that. So they're not perfect drawing, but it's really just to be able to capture people's gestures. And on the other side at the Ibiza airport, so we were there for a little bit, and I also started to use the markers, the gray markers, to be able to really add more details and shape. Like this guy turned out really good, of the people there. And you can see the style. Again, it's not precise, but it's interesting how fast you can get the image that you want by using just a few lines and adding markers to that. Again, did the same thing here, waiting for people. I think it was at a restaurant, and I get the gesture of how people were sitting, and the plane, looking at the plane before we boarded and stuff like that. And an interesting thing was people had really great style. There was this old couple that were matching with like pink and fuchsia colors, which was very interesting. So again, writing notes about things that I observed there. When we were in Barcelona for a day, we had a chance to go to the beach. So I sketched some of the people at the beach. Again, because of the fact that I learned about how to sketch people in motion, I was practicing still after the symposium to get better at that. And because also I was learning about using colors, I had some markers that I had received from the symposium, so I was kind of playing with the different colors to see what I was able to do with it. Then we had to go back to Canada, so those were the people waiting at the airport to go back to Canada. We had to wait for a long time, 70 minutes, I wrote it down. And basically I drew the line of people waiting, what people were saying. It was the longest line at the airport compared to all the other airline. And not a lot of people were happy, so I basically kept all those souvenirs with me. And again, I did more gestures of the people there, and it was interesting to see the difference in style compared to the people in Spain, going from Ibiza to Barcelona, and the people going from Barcelona to Canada. Once in Toronto, I still have a couple pages, so I continued to sketch what I saw there. I started to sketch people in the subway, so I guess those are my first sketches of people in the subway in Toronto. I had met the founder of the Kitchener Urban Sketchers, so once back in Ibiza, in Barcelona, so once back to Toronto, we met up again at the Rome, and we decided to go and sketch there. So it was essentially the first urban sketching event in Toronto. And it just so happened that there were students there that were sketching some of the sculptures there. So we sketched that as well. Rome has a lot of interesting dinosaurs, so I sketched that as well. And some of the kids passing by were really excited to see the drawing of the dinosaur bones that I had sketched in my sketchbook. This was basically an event going on in Toronto. Like the people had like a little picnic, so I basically sketched the people there, and I was starting to practice more with watercolors. I had another palette, so I basically, a lot of sketchers do that, kind of just look at what the colors look like on paper. Here were again people in the subway that I started to sketch, but I was really more comfortable using markers and watercolors for shades. Then again, with the whole idea of people in motion, I went to the Caravana. I went and sat there and started to sketch the people attending, taking notes of what people were saying, and also the costume. So that was before the event started, and then as the event started and people were walking by, I started to sketch the people. For example, Scotiabank had a sea of people dressed in red and white, so I sketched them, and whatever details that I was able to catch really fast, I sketched them, and then I would take a break and add colors to it. There was a lot of very interesting costumes. So if you really want to practice people in motion, Caravana, like if you have a good seat, is a great opportunity to sketch people in motion with lots of very interesting colors. So I basically sat there for a couple hours and sketched either the people marching as you can see, with like some very interesting elaborate costumes. Wrote some notes about the different groups of people there. And then if you want to spend more time sketching the people in front of you, which is what I did at the bottom here, you could do that as well. Again, more sketches of the caravana. A couple of girls standing around looking at their cell phone was a great opportunity. Some costumes, again, groups of people. It was a really good practice for colors, for watercolors and quick sketches of gestures. And again, more people standing. I think I moved a little bit, moved around a little bit to be able to get a different scene, and I decided to sketch all the people behind the line that were looking, and some of the costume that I would see. And this is the last sketch that I did when I was there. You can see that I was getting a little tired, but I still want to capture a little bit more of the costumes and add colors to it and stuff like that. And then that was just somebody that was painting a building on the outside. This is one of the Toronto neighborhood that had like a bunch of townhouses in a row that I decided to sketch as well. And here, people in the subway. I really like using the gray pens to be able to add shades to it. I was new to Toronto, so I went to Creative Mornings to be able to attend a talk by Jennifer Keysmart and took a bunch of notes about what was being said there. So that's not urban sketching, it's more like sketch notes. Here, again, people in the subway. I was really new to the whole thing, but I guess I was still into the whole idea of sketching people in motion. Although in the subway, they don't move too much. In this occasion, I went to the Toronto B-Girl Movement Celebration, which is basically like a break-dancing gathering. And yeah, definitely there was people in motion there. More interesting outfits, interesting colors, so that was a great way to practice. It was really difficult because obviously they move a lot faster there, but still I was able to capture either details like shoes and pants of very interesting colors, or the MC here. And on the other side, people just sitting down listening to the MC, and at the bottom a cipher, which is basically when a bunch of the dancers stand around and one of them is at the middle dancing. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that one. And this was another occasion where, again, all the dancers were gathered around. One specific dancer would go in the center and kind of do his or her trick and see who wins. I tried also to get some of the outfit that the dancers were wearing during the competition. And the last one, again, people in the TTC practicing a watercolor. So that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.